Reggie Trio, or Quintet now I should say, are absolutely peak. Okay, not in terms of how they battle, most of them actually kinda suck in that department. Except Regigigas, who's fast enough to compete in a dang NASCAR race. But by and large, they set the bar for legendary Pokemon, both in terms of lore and gameplay. And what makes them so special is the fact that something like them will probably never happen again. Introduced in Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, the Reggie Trio have surprisingly little lore in those games. Even the future Hoenn games of Emerald and Oras do basically nothing to expand upon them. The only inklings of information you get about their existence are from the Ruin Maniac NPCs who always show up near their sealed chambers, or from a couple of random NPCs living in Pacific Log Town. Pacific Log Town in general is probably one of my favorite locations in all of Hoenn. It's the only town in Hoenn that's completely optional to visit, serving primarily as just a shortcut back to Slateport City, or a good location to fly to whenever you need to visit Sky Pillar to catch Rayquaza. It's the Pokemon World equivalent of a gas station. But Pacific Log Town conveniently and unknowingly rests between two of the Hoenn region's biggest secrets. To the east, Mirage Island, the rarest location in Pokemon history that almost never spawns in-game. And to the west, submerged deep beneath the ocean, the Sealed Chamber, which holds all the keys to unlocking the mystery of the Reggies. Even getting to the Sealed Chamber is a challenge in itself, as you have to perfectly navigate the speeding currents of routes 132, 133, and 134. Don't ask me why they split a straight line up into 3 separate routes, because the answer definitely isn't extra Nuzlocke encounters. Using Dive at the end of the currents, the player finds an underwater cavern. Upon entering the Sealed Chamber, a series of Braille messages gives instructions on what to do next. Fun fact, the Trainer's Guide instruction manual that came with Ruby and Sapphire actually has a table on how to translate Braille. This may just be the most practical instruction manual ever included. IKEA could never! Back in the Sealed Chamber, in the first room, the Braille reads, "Dig here," instructing the player to use Dig from their menu of Pokemon. And this is incredibly easy to screw up, as I learned the first time I played these games, because Dig is a TM that you can only obtain once. And if you teach it to your Mightyena, and then leave it in the daycare to level up 45 times, well, yeah, you know. The only other way to overcome this is to level up a Trapinch all the way to level 41 without evolving, or an Inkata all the way to level 45. Gabby and Ty, you guys are getting a workout. That, or complete the entire endgame of Fire Red and Leaf Green to unlock cross-region trading so you can send a Diglett over. Thanks again, Game Freak. Best game design ever. The second room is a little more interesting, with the Braille reading, "First comes Relicanth, last comes Wailord," or the opposite order in Emerald version. The significance of Wailord and Relicanth are their connections to the themes of Ruby and Sapphire, specifically land and sea. Relicanth is basically a living fossil Pokemon and is based on the Coelacanth, an ancient fish that is widely believed to be the ancestor of all land-based vertebrates. They were actually believed to have gone extinct 66 million years ago before they were rediscovered in 1938. Might have been the only good thing that happened in 1938. Relicanth's design also interestingly features a red dot on its tan side, resembling the spot where treasure would be found on a treasure map. Perhaps an allusion to the fact that Relicanth is one of the keys to unlocking the Reggies. Meanwhile, Wailord is the opposite, being based on a whale, I know, shocking, whose ancestors are believed to have lived on land before they evolved to live under the sea. And this is part of the reason why a whale is technically a mammal and not a fish. Man, peak lore and world building, and we haven't even reached the Reggies yet! Which of course leads us to the last inscription. It has 2 different versions depending on whether you're playing the original Hoenn games or the remakes, but since the remix version goes a little more in depth, that's the one I'll be choosing to read here. Long did we live here in this cave, all thanks to the powerful Pokemon living alongside us. Yet, we sealed that Pokemon away, alone in the dark. We feared it. If you have the courage, if you still hold to hope, open the door, for beyond it, the eternal Pokemon awaits. After reading this inscription, the doors to the Reggies are finally unsealed across the Hoenn region. From there, the game makes you solve a few more puzzles to unlock each of the doors, and these puzzles do change between games. None of them are super significant to the lore, but I think my personal favorite is Regigigas in Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, where it just says, "Hey man, stand here and do absolutely nothing for 2 minutes." The best part about this is, it doesn't even take 2 minutes to like and subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it if you did. Okay, so some might argue that this was maybe a little much to expect kids to comprehend, and admittedly, it took me several years to even do the Reggies properly. But honestly, that's my favorite part of the Reggies right there. They're built around multiple layers of puzzles. First there's catching 2 obscure water-type Pokemon, then navigating a series of ocean currents, and then translating literal Braille. And the wildest part is, these guys aren't even that good! They actually kinda suck in terms of usability as far as most legendary Pokemon go. Like, this should be the level of effort required to get the Tapus, not the Reggies. You wanna ruin VGC? You gotta put the work in. But mostly, I love them because they embodied this old game design philosophy of just figure it out. The internet was barely a thing, but they gave you the tools. You can just read the instruction manual. And if you pull everything off the way it was intended, you had legendary Pokemon that probably few other kids in the block had. But that's only one half of what makes the Reggies so cool, because the second best part of the Reggies, in my opinion, is the foreshadowing. Going back to that final inscription in the sealed chamber, it talks about the existence of an eternal Pokemon. We feared it, the people wrote. They hint at the existence of a Pokemon that transcends these 3. And only a few short years later in Diamond and Pearl, we would get it. Deep within the basement of Snow Point Temple, a place where only the most powerful trainers are permitted entry, Regigigas lies sealed behind a colossal door. At least in Legends Arceus, where they can visualize it a little bit better. But Regigigas can only be battled when the other 3 Reggies are captured and brought to it. At least in the modern day games that aren't Legends Arceus. My favorite instance of this actually comes in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, where you can't battle Regigigas unless you have all 3 Reggies, a nicknamed Regice, and Regice holding a cold item like a Nevermelt Ice or a Castelia Cone. The funny part is, a random little girl tells you to do this in Pacific Logtown because her grandpa said so. This is literally a meta joke of, my dad works at Nintendo and he said Mew lives under the truck in Vermilion City. It's a complete gag, but it is so complex that it feels perfectly at home with the Reggie group. Absolute cinema! Though, some have also theorized that it's because of Ice's role in cryopreservation, and that Regigigas had literally been frozen away to preserve itself, which explains the slow start ability and why it was originally found in the Snow Point Temple. Interesting theory, but I still like the idea that it was just a crap post. But long after we thought the Reggie lore had been concluded, Sword and Shield dug them back out in a big way. The Crown Tundra DLC had a huge focus on exploration. And which group of Pokemon embodies the spirit of exploration more than the Reggies? In addition to the original 4 making a return, 2 new ones would also be added to the group, Regieleki and Regidrago, who seemed to break the mold on the idea of the Reggies being created by traditional building materials. As Regieleki was constructed from a cluster of electric energy, and Regidrago was made from crystallized dragon energy. Sure, whatever you say, dude. Apparently, Regigigas did make these 2 inherently more powerful than the previous Reggie trio. So much so that he actually had to nerf them, as Regieleki was outfitted with a restricting non-conductive coil, and Regidrago was purposefully left unfinished. Funnily enough, Game Freak had to nerf Regieleki too. He was so powerful in the Sword and Shield era that they nerfed Transistor to only give its electric moves a 30% buff, while keeping Regidrago's ability exactly the same. One of the few instances where they haven't nerfed that duo together. Anyway, capturing all 5 of the Reggies then unlocks an incredible super boss battle against a Dynamax to level 100 Regigigas, in where else but the Giant's Bed. Super fitting for a deity known as the Colossal Pokemon. He's almost as big as your mom! And while the game never goes out of its way to confirm it, it does imply that Regigigas and potentially its underlings were the giants described throughout Galar's lore. Maybe this is the region where they actually originated from. Or maybe they were among the very first Pokemon to Dynamax as a result of Eternatus' arrival. But on that note, let's get back to their real-life inspirations. While the decision to add these 2 Reggies was a divisive one, it did finally define what the Reggie trio was meant to represent. Previously, as mentioned, the 3 Reggies were just seen as building materials for Regigigas to make minions of in its own image. But now we can pretty confidently say that the 5 Reggies represent different eras here on Earth. Regidrago, the eldest of the group, represents the Mesozoic era of Earth. The age of the dinosaurs. Dinosaur Pokemon are usually heavily associated with the dragon type, so this explains the type connection. Next up, the Ice Age, represented by Regice. The Stone Age, represented by Regirock, the Iron Age, represented by Registeel, and finally, Regieleki, representing the modern age of electricity. So basically, the 2 Gen 8 Reggies bookend Regigigas' creations. Though collectively, the Reggies are inspired by the idea of the Hebrew golems, falling in line with Groudon, Kyogre, and Rayquaza, who were also inspired by Hebrew mythology. These golems were meant to serve higher powers and could only be awakened and sealed away when the writing was removed from their heads, in a very similar manner to the Reggies. As for the big man himself, Regigigas, while he was also inspired by these Hebrew legends, he also borrows a bit from Greek mythology, with it being sealed away to Snow Point Temple appearing to be a direct reference to the Titans being confined to the underworld at the end of the Titan War. Regigigas' ability to tow the continents using large ropes not only establishes that it's likely from the same time period as Groudon and Kyogre, but also draws parallels to the Greek titan known as Atlas, who was condemned to bear the weight of the world. Atlas, being a mostly dormant force in Greek mythology, may have also played into the decision to give slow start to Regigigas and delay its debut to Gen 4. Unfortunately, as much as I love the Reggie group, I highly doubt we'll ever receive a group of legendaries like them ever again. Maybe the closest we'll ever get are the Treasures of Ruin, where you were incentivized to look over every corner of Paldea to find their stakes, but even they seem to lack some of the deeper puzzle solving that the Reggies present. As I'm sure we all know by now, modern legendary Pokemon seem to favor accessibility and story content rather than mystery. Not to say that it's an objectively worse approach, everybody has their preferences, and I'm sure there are people who absolutely hated the Braille puzzles with the Reggies. But for me personally, this is as good as legendary Pokemon get. And while knowing that we'll probably get nothing like this ever again does sadden me, in a way, it does make the Reggies feel even more like peak legendary Pokemon. There's something that Game Freak will never try again.